Welcome in, second cousins in studio in Orlando, Florida. It is good to be here with you all out there, and it is very special to be here with Magic player history, the man, the myth, the legend. Jay is here. It's good to see you.
Good to finally meet you in person.
Yeah.
Good to see Pich again. Happy to be here, guys.
So we have Jay in here for a conversation about this man. The man I'm wearing on my chest here, Dwight Howard, recently inducted into the Orlando Magic Hall of Fame. And we thought there's no better person to pick their brain about this guy than Magic player history, Jay here. And just talk about, to start, I mean, Dwight Howard is the guy, I think, in the Pantheon. It rubbed a lot of Magic fans the wrong way, including myself, that Shaquille O'Neal was the first jersey raised into the rafters when, if you look at the leaders for our franchise, Dwight Howard is number one in most of those categories. So, I mean, Jay, you document these guys and where they sit in the Pantheon of Orlando Magic players. What does Dwight Howard mean to this franchise and maybe even to you as just a fan?
Yeah, I think Dwight's the clear number one all time. And I think people just have to separate what Dwight did on the court versus, things that happened off the court. Obviously, the way that he left the franchise left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And I think, the way that Shaq left the franchise left a bad taste in people's mouth as well. But, maybe it's just because, Shaq's on TV a lot and people see him and he's a funny guy and, people seem to have forgiven him a little bit. But I think that hopefully the tide is starting to turn here with Dwight and we're seeing him in a bit more of a positive light, I think. So for me, I think Dwight is a clear number one. As I said, he's still number one, points, rebounds and blocks. He's 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, multiple-time All-Star, All-NBA center. And obviously, the peak of his NBA career was here in Orlando, and he will go into the NBA Hall of Fame. Should have been on the 75th anniversary team. I mean, Anthony Davis, come on, mate. So the clear number one all time, in my opinion, is Dwight Howard. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get an argument from me, but I appreciate that you're an old head like me. You've liked the Magic since the beginning, so you realize the impact of him on this team versus some of these other guys. I mean, Shaq being with the team for 5-6 years, going up first feels insulting, right? Like to Dwight and what he created. And I think they knew, we got to put Dwight up there, but shoot, we got to put Shaq up there too. I mean, Shaq hangs out at Magic games a lot now. Yeah, and he's a famous personality. He's in Papa John's commercials. I mean, he's kind of everywhere. So I think that was just sort of a goodwill thing to make sure we're good with him.
Honestly, I just think that they're going to do it chronologically. They're starting with Shaq because he was here first. I think Dwight's going to go up there for sure. So I don't necessarily think we got to look, because Orlando, they were so anti-retiring jerseys for so long. Yeah. And then when we get here, when we decide, okay, we're going to retire jerseys, do we start with the best player of all time or do we go with, first sort of superstar? And I think that's the way that they've done it with Shaq. So it didn't really rub me the wrong way that Shaq went up there first. I know Dwight's number 12 is going to go up there as well. And Shaq's deserves to be up there, in my opinion, as well. But if anyone should have gone up there first, I'd be thinking about Nick Anderson. That's where I would have been thinking maybe Nick should have gone up there first. But I argued for Nick Anderson to go up and have his number retired for a long, long time. And there are plenty of teams out there who retire those kind of guys who were not necessarily an all-star, but who were an incredibly important key player in one of the franchise's best ever teams. And that's what he was for that first finals team, So I think Nick definitely deserved at least consideration, and maybe he will go up there eventually.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Dwight Howard, in his recent Hall of Fame induction speech, was very emotional and has stated he wished that he would tell himself not to leave. I think it was on Orlando Magic Pod Squad, that 10-minute edition, where they asked him, what could yourself now, if you could go back and tell 21-year-old Dwight something, what would it be? And he said emphatically, don't leave! Don't leave Orlando! Because, hindsight's 20/20. He's matured. He realized how good those times were. And, yeah, I think maybe you were a little bitter out there, second cousins, when he left. And I was confused, certainly, at that time. But seeing Dwight get really emotional about what Orlando means to him meant a lot to me, because those runs to the finals were a time. I was in college. I was in university. I was, really excited about the team, and I know many of you are in the same age demographic. So that was a time where we were really following the team closely. Shaq, I was a little bit too young to really appreciate everything. That Shaq and Penny era, I was very young at 8, 9. I don't really know how old I was when all that was going down. But Dwight was kind of like my guy, my first guy that took the team and brought that team to the finals. And there was he had good players around him, but Dwight Howard being the focus, it was something special to watch. And as you're looking through Basketball Reference, like you said, Jay, like leader in so many things, offensive win shares, defensive win shares. You said
the big categories.
What's that?
The big categories.
Well, you already talked about blocks, points, defensive rebounds, total rebounds.
I think I don't know if you got the list on Basketball Reference, but one of the massive things, if you look up the number of 2020 games, like you might have to pull up StatMuse for that. Like he is, I think, in the last, I guess maybe if we're looking at Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell or something, but in the last 50 years, Dwight has got like 10 times more 2020 games than anybody else in NBA history, that's one of his. He was the king of the 2020 game.
And maybe that's why I'm a little hard on WCJ, because I'm used to seeing a center that can go 20 and 20. And this cat has a hard time doing 10 and 10.
Hey,
who's going to get it in, Jay?
Yeah. Well, at least WCJ doesn't miss 20 free throws in a game,
All right. Well, he doesn't get to the line that much either because he's not doing any big man shit. But he's 6'10". He's bigger than me, for the record. But I mean,
well, Dwight's only about 6'10", I suppose. But Dwight was,
he played like a big man.
Yeah, look, he could eat Wendell with them shoulders, man.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to pop threes either. He knew his place. He was in the middle, passed out to all of our competent 3-point shooters. What a concept.
Oh, Rashard Lewis, man.
Oh,
how would he go on this team?
I still think that's one of the best free agent signings we've ever had. I know the Horace Grant one gets all the love, and that was a great one as well. But I think the Rashard Lewis one in that era was the one that really was like, okay, the Magic going out and spending some money, bringing in a guy who can shoot, and he played well for us. He was a great player. He doesn't really get his flowers, I don't think, that often, but he was a great player.
A key player. He's a very important player in our second sort of finals team, Rashard Lewis. And look, just he was the stretch big before there was a thing in the NBA. Like we were ironically as bad a 3-point shooting team as the Orlando Magic are these days. We were the pioneers of having the 4-out offense really with Dwight back in the day. So and Dwight made that possible because he drew the double team every time he touched the ball in there.
Right.
And it was very easy to find somebody open on the perimeter. And Jameer could hit the shot, Hito could hit the shot, Rashard Lewis could hit the shot, and so we were deadly. So it was an amazing team.
I remember Dwight, and when I worked for the Milwaukee Bucks, I remember Dwight and Jameer were both injured and they weren't playing, and they were just being a menace around the backstage area, like running around, being goofy, hiding behind curtains, moving stuff, like knocking stuff over and giggling and running away. And I'm like,
they sound really injured.
What are these guys doing? But you could tell that there was like a good, strong bond there. So it was cool to see him mention Jameer in his speech, giving him props because that I think when you're a young guy, especially a guy that came out of high school in his case, you need someone else to show you the ropes or grow with. And they were both in the same draft, but Jameer obviously had several years on Dwight because of his stint playing college basketball. So it was cool to hear him talk about that. And just in general, you're right. I think if anybody had the bad feels about him leaving, I think sort of what he talked about in his speech helped to erase that.
I mean, look at it this way. We got Vooch back in the Dwight trade, and we traded Vooch for Wendell and Franz and Jet. So, we wouldn't have Franz if we hadn't lost Dwight.
That's a great transition, Jay. That's a great transition because we did want to move this conversation to the current team. And while Dwight was sitting courtside, I think during, was it the Dallas game or he came?
The Lakers game.
The Lakers game. Oh, man, that did infuriate me that we decided to put him into the Hall of Fame on the Lakers game and also give away the Franz bobbleheads on the Lakers game. But that's
hey, I got a bobblehead, so I'm happy with that.
Lakers fans, if you're out there, just do the right thing and send them over here to Orlando. But Dwight mentioned Paolo Banchero, and he talked about him, and you said those shoulders of Dwight, but Dwight was talking about how big Paolo Banchero is. And you mentioned how Dwight Howard, the trade to LA, gets us to Franz Wagner as well. So those are our two cornerstone guys now in Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. And with Dwight Howard firmly on the Mount Rushmore of Orlando Magic players, the question becomes, will we also see the busts of Franz and Paolo on Mount Rushmore? Where do those guys stand right now, Jay? Because I know you caught a little flack for your 35th year anniversary of where you rank them. How are they looking right now, and where do you see them ending in terms of Orlando Magic?
Well, I think let's start by, I think there's got to be a consensus of who's on the Mount Rushmore right now. Like, whatever order you've got these guys in, we're looking at Dwight, Shaq, T-Mac, and Penny. That's the Orlando Magic Mount Rushmore, in my opinion. And I would imagine that 90% of Magic fans have got to agree with that. Like, Vooch is probably the next guy, and I just don't think he's on that level. And, you know, Nick Anderson is on the fringe. You know, I'd probably say those were the top 6 guys, okay? Now, is Paolo or Franz into that top 6 right now? I don't think so. I don't think that they're up there right now. I think that there is room on that Mount Rushmore, and as much as it pains me to say it, I think I got my Penny Hardaway socks on here today, but Penny Hardaway is probably the one who's on our Mount Rushmore there, and just because of the injuries. Like, who knows what Penny could have been, you know, if he had never got injured. And he had, you know, an incredible career, and, you know, his star burned very bright, but it burned for a short time before the injuries kind of derailed his career. I think that we can certainly see Paolo by the end of his career surpass Penny. Are we going to see him surpass T-Mac or Shaq as NBA players? That's still up for debate, but are we going to see Paolo's career surpass T-Mac or Shaq's Orlando Magic career? And that's where I think we've got an argument, because I would say, yeah, we can. Because, again, Paolo and Shaq were only, T-Mac and Shaq were only here for 4 seasons. And so if Paolo, you know, if we get him on this extension and he stays here for 8-10 years, then I think that Paolo is going to be, then we're going to have this conversation with Paolo versus Dwight.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I wish I had something to not agree with you, although I don't think Vooch is close to getting.
We can talk about WCJ if we want to disagree.
No, he's not. He's at the base of the mountain. He just looks up at the top. But yeah, no, I think Paolo is heading there. I think he's putting together the accolades, the scoring outbursts, the being the center of the team. I would be nervous to think about if Franz makes that, because I think Paolo is so the center. So like a lot of times, you know, Paolo scoring 30 maybe, and then Franz is coming in at 22, which is good. It's really good. But I think maybe Paolo's overshadowing him, and it maybe people will think of this as the Paolo era and maybe not so much the Franz era. Maybe it'll depend on how long they're here. But I see both those guys easily moving in the top 10 Orlando Magic players of all time. And that's what you want. You want to be able to have some guys that are going to challenge or be in there and be in that conversation. And that's usually what you need to win a title. Is you need to have a couple of those guys on your team at the same time, and then enough role players around them to get there. And I think we're all in that mindset of like, yeah, these 2 guys, but what, you know, someone else got to either step up or new people have to come in. So.
Yeah, and we're here with Magic Player History. Make sure you get over, especially to the Instagram page. You put a lot of really great stuff out, Jay, especially the Magic Player, the mover of the night is an awesome thing to just keep an eye on. And as I'm scrolling here, just looking out for Paolo and Franz stuff and where they stack up, it's assists, a post not too long ago. Franz is at 15th in Orlando Magic Player History of assists, and Paolo sits at 20 points scored.
I noticed that you didn't do a mover of the night after our Court of Dreams. I was hoping I'd see me on the rebound, moving up the chart. just put us in there a little bit, you know. Maybe put Jonathan in there too. I mean, just.
I'm still waiting on the box score. Nobody's sent me. Yeah. Got any of the box score? Yeah.
Paolo 17 in points on that list. As I keep scrolling here, what else we got? I know there was another Franz. Mover of the night, defensive rebounds, Paolo Banchero, number 18th overall Orlando Magic history.
I think Paolo's about to crack the top 10 in free throw makes for the franchise, which, you know, yeah, he may already be top 10 in attempts. But I don't put the attempts up there. But he's I think his free throw makes will be the first category where he cracks the top 10. And Franz is getting up there as well in the free throws as well. So they're both good at getting to the line. So look, I think it's not going to be long where they're fully entrenched in the top 10 in points, rebounds, assists for sure, field goals, even 3-pointers. Even though Franz's 3-point 3-point shot has taken a dip. He still makes a lot more 3-pointers than they were shooting in the NBA 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. And the game has significantly changed. And one part of the game that has changed is the contract extensions. I mean, when Shaq left, there wasn't the very structured agreements that exist now. If the Magic at that time were able to offer him the max extension, he probably still would have gone to LA because he had to make Kazam, everyone, right? He had to make Kazam.
Most of my content is on Instagram and Twitter, but there is YouTube Magic Play history as well. And the Shaquille O'Neal video I made there, it breaks down how we lost him. You know, there was 1 year in the 90s where restricted free agency was actually taken off the table, where restricted free agency was always a thing, and then there was a new collective bargaining agreement, and they wiped out restricted free agency for one small period in the CBA. And that was when Shaquille O'Neal came up for free agency. And so we could, up until that CBA, we could have matched any offer. But for a small window, there was no matching period. LA put the offer on the table. And look, there's a lot of other things that factored into the decision. And it's all broken down in that video. But yeah, if it had have happened a few years earlier or a few years later, we would have been able to match that deal, and we never would have lost him.
So something shady happened to make the LA Lakers better. Yeah. Has that ever happened in history?
There's some recent history here, if you might be talking about. You're first on the ground there in Dallas, mate, so you've got a first-hand look at that.
The conspiracy Kyle out here, it sounds like. But, I mean, you know, again, with that extension, Paolo's going to get the max. Franz has already gotten the max. Those are 5-year extensions on top of their 4-year rookie deals. So 9 years, like you said, is already significantly more than Shaq, significantly more than T-Mac. How many years was Dwight here? Was he here 8 years? 8, So hypothetically, that would even be longer than Dwight. And, I mean, if these guys continue to produce at the rates that they have been, it's going to be a really good conversation.
And look, we can stack up all the stats we want, but the main thing here is winning. And so we've been to the playoff once. You know, they tested last year. You know, we're hoping to get in there again this season, and it's going to be a very tough first round matchup. And then, you know, we need to, like, progress is not linear. Okay, this year we had a lot of injuries, but you know, there's some clear flaws in this team which need to be fixed in the off season so that these guys can actually have some players around them that actually enhance their game. Right now, Paolo and Franz are out there every night trying to overplay the flaws of everyone else on the court. How about we get some guys out there that actually accentuate their skills and actually help these guys to play rather than them having to make up for the flaws of the other guys? So if we can get to that point, then, you know, then we're actually going to get into the playoffs and make some noise. And that's when we're going to be looking at these guys as the best Orlando Magic players of all time.
Jay can see this from Australia, so hopefully people here in the 407 are also seeing this.
Well, we are all happy to be seeing the careers of Franz and Paolo here in Orlando. Let us know what you think, Second Cousins. How does Dwight stack up in your pantheon of Orlando Magic greats, and will Paolo and Franz eventually pass him? It's good to have you here, Jay. It's to meet you in the flesh. I'm wrapping up. Until next time, Second Cousins.
Peace.
Peace out.
Thanks for coming.
Had to get it in there.